the Devonta Smith thing is still interesting. I mean, the report then came out that they finally got him on the scales, right? He said he was 170 at his pro day, told everybody that's what he played at, that was his weight. But apparently at the medical combine, like the scouting combine in Indy still went ahead, but it was essentially just 150 guys getting medical screening in the one facility. The medical combine got Devonta Smith on the scales, and at the medical combine he was apparently 166 pounds.
Yikes.
Now, I mean, 166, 170, what the hell does it matter? It's 4 pounds different. But the point is the number keeps getting smaller. And it's like, he's 180, now he's 175, now he says he's 170, now he turns out he's actually 166. It keeps getting progressively slightly more scary. Like the scariest thing I heard about it is, remember Bernard Berrien, Bears, Vikings receiver, built like a stick?
Long, skinny receiver.
Yes, who was the same height as Devonta Smith. He had 20 pounds on him. 20, 25? I can't remember what I listed him at, but 20 to 25 pounds more than Devonta Smith for a guy who was essentially built the same. Like if a notoriously skinny receiver who had 20 to 25 pounds on you, you are so skinny it's ridiculous. So I still love Devonta Smith. I think if you didn't know that he was that weight, it wouldn't come up as a thing. Like, it's immediately obvious when you're watching the tape, but it doesn't show up anywhere. You don't find these plays where you're like, oh yeah, there he is getting bullied because he's 166 pounds. So you shouldn't care, I don't think. But just the fact that it would make him such a ridiculous outlier if he was a really good player at that weight. It's so hard to find any precedent for that whatsoever. It has to at least linger in the back of your mind and scare you a little bit. And for me, it's enough to separate him and Chase, as a tiebreaker. I think they're very, very close as receivers, but Jamar Chase outweighs him by like 35 pounds or something ridiculous. So go with that, right? But if you're Miami and you're like, we've seen him play in college with Tua, we think, honestly, he has the best skill set in terms of he wins with separation, and that's the missing element to this receiving group right now. He's the most natural fit. The question essentially becomes, like, how much does 166 pounds scare you? Because on the field in college, those guys were very, very comparable.
I think they're tiebreakers, like you said. I think if you said skill set wise, Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith are similar, and then you get into it, you just go through all the tiebreakers, right? And I think that was the 1 year wonder discussion that we had yesterday. I would envision a world where, and teams do this, right? You throw labels on guys and all that stuff, but you have a grade on the player. What do you think he's going to be as a player? But I think all of these things need to be tabbed. So if a guy's a 1 year wonder, you have that noted. If a guy is undersized for his position and is a rarity, the way he's built or whatever it is, you note that. So it's about just kind of like adding all these, it's like before you get married, you probably put like a pros and cons list together, right? I'm kidding. So if you're making a real decision, maybe buying a house, maybe not marriage, Sam. You're buying a house, you put some pros and cons together, right? Has the number of bedrooms I'm looking for, but it doesn't have a yard. You put some pros and cons together, and you figure out where it lands when you put it side by side. So I think you put it in the negative category for Devonta Smith, but I also think Jim Nagy made the point that somebody, when Russell Wilson was being drafted, the draft room that he was in, I think it was the Chiefs, they brought up, okay, why is Russell Wilson not a first rounder? Don't say height. And nobody had an answer.
Right.
So that's a fair assessment. There's a few players that buck that trend, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, because technically it's not even a negative if you think about it, right? Like it's something that should cause a negative somewhere, right? Like Russell Wilson's height. Why is that a negative? Because it usually prevents a quarterback from doing X, Y, and Z, or at least that's the perception. Now, go into the tape and show me where that's actually happening, and you have an argument. If you can't, then why do I care? And that's the Devonta Smith thing. It's like, okay, 166 pounds is a negative because it means you're too lightweight to deal with big corners who can press you on the outside. You're going to get stuck at the line of scrimmage. You're not going to be able to separate because those guys are going to manhandle you. Now turn on the tape and show me where that's happening, because you can't. because Devonta Smith has the best grade and the best PFF grade of any of these receivers against press coverage. That dude can't be pressed at the line of scrimmage. It doesn't matter. He doesn't get physically bullied in his routes. He doesn't get beaten at the catch point because he's 30 pounds less than the guy that's trying to cover him, at which point the weight isn't a negative. Like the weight should cause these negatives, but it doesn't. So it's more that it's just a fear. It's not even, I don't think, a firm negative against him. It's just, this is unknown, and we fear the unknown in draft time.
I would treat it just like you treat any other observation when you're watching the film, to your point. So if you have an offensive lineman who's, slow in his kick step or something like that, if he can make up for it with length and good, and he takes good, his pass sets are still technically sound, and you're cutting off the defender the right way, you just happen to be slow, then you answer the question, how much does the slow part matter, right? So if you're going to say this guy's not good at getting off press, okay, well, that's an issue. But if you're just going to say, well, this guy's light, okay, show me it when he's not able to get off press or at the catch point or whatever, wherever you need strength.
To me, it should be treated like a weird number in athletic testing that you didn't anticipate, right? So you a lot of times you see a guy and you have a feeling on where he is in terms of height, speed, weight, size, explosion, whatever it is. And then the pro days happen and the combine happens, and suddenly a guy pops up with a weird number that nobody was expecting. And what that does, it doesn't completely change your entire evaluation, but what it does is, ooh, that's odd. Let's go back to the tape and figure out if we can see that anywhere. So if a guy shows up and runs like a 40 that's way faster or slower than anybody was expecting, you don't just go, oh, that changes entirely what we thought about this player. You go, okay, let's go back to the tape and see if we can figure out where that came from. To me, that's what Devonta Smith's weight should do. It's like, okay, he's really, really lightweight. Let's go back to the tape and just make sure that we don't find places where that's a problem. Because you can see that issue with receivers. It's not like it's a thing that's hidden and you only find it out when you get to the NFL. Like, I had that concern with Andy Isabella, right? Insane PFF college grade, incredibly productive. But when I went through his tape, you're like, he is really lightweight, and you can see it regularly. Right now, they did a lot to make sure that he wasn't press covered, but you could see him get bumped off routes when he was running them and all those kinds of things. Any kind of contact was a real problem for him. You don't see the same thing with Devonta Smith. So there's no evidence yet of that weight being a problem for him, at which point I'm inclined to just sort of trust what you see and not care. But the lower the number gets, the scarier it becomes, and that's just human nature. To me, the closest comparison I could think of in terms of like body shape, somebody that looks as cartoonish as he does, was Todd Pinkston. Remember him for the Eagles back in Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb, Brian Westbrook tenure, where they didn't have any receivers? Todd Pinkston, now Pinkston is taller and therefore bigger. He's like 6'3", but I think he was 6'3", 180, which proportionally is about the same as 6 foot and 166. And Pinkston was a pretty good receiver. Now, Pinkston's biggest failing is that he had alligator arms and didn't really want to go over the middle and get annihilated by guys that were bigger than him. I'm not even comparing them as players, more as just body type, but even if you just said, okay, Devonta Smith is Todd Pinkston without being that much of a scaredy cat over the middle, that's a pretty damn good player right off the bat.
I'll have to go back and evaluate Pinkston. You just keep dropping these mid-2000s. I got to go watch Pinkston now. I got to go watch Mark Bulger, Devontae's quarterback, Mac Jones.
Yep.
So we had Mark Bulger throwing to Todd Pinkston.
Yep.
This year. That's not exciting for top 10 players talked about in the top 10.
Isn't it, though? Like, this is the thing. Nate Tice had this kind of shtick, this pre-draft process.
I knew I was setting you up
the athletic guy. And I don't even know if he was deliberately doing it to troll people or if this is just like realism. Everybody wants to compare a draft prospect to a Hall of Famer. This is the next Randy Moss. This is the next Tyreek Hill. This is the next Myles Garrett, whatever it is. But realistically, even the good players are just going to be good NFL players. That's an absolute home run, even in the top 10. If these guys just become good NFL players. So why, if you get Mark Bulger throwing to Todd Pinkston, or particularly Mark Bulger throwing to Todd Pinkston without the alligator arms, That's a pretty damn good return.
Is it though?
Yeah. Mark Bulger was a very good quarterback for a period of time until he got broken by that offensive line.
In the top 10?